Hi, welcome everyone. Always fun to see folks trickle in whenever we open the waiting room. Super excited to have you all with us. While we get everybody in, just wanted to highlight that you can enter to win $200 in Leland coaching credit. This is coaching credit that you can use on our platform. You can use that or enter to win that credit by using this bit.ly link here or using this QR code here. I'll give you just a couple seconds. You can also screenshot this slide if helpful before we get
Oh, hey Ellie.
on a
Uh, hey Ellie, just wanted to flag. I think you may be cutting out on us a little bit. You there with us? Is it just me? To our panelists, Amanda, Karla, Lucas, is she cutting out for you?
Yeah, and I thought it was me.
No, love happens. All right. Let's give it 1 second. I think we may have lost Ellie there for a minute. Let's relocate. Oh, Ellie, you there with us? Thank you all for your patience. Listen, we have like 12 or 15 events over a couple of days. This is bound to happen at some point. I will pick up where Ellie left off until she can rejoin us. I hope to have her again soon. But for those that are just coming in, I'll resend that prompt in the giveaway, or go ahead and resend that chat and the prompt in the chat to join our giveaway for $200 of free coaching credit. You can enter, it's literally $200 that we'll announce at the end of the call. Let's see here. So let me take one moment to go ahead and reshare the slides for today's session, and we'll just pick things up. Again, hope to have Ellie join us shortly, but we want to make sure that we get our questions to you in a timely manner. I know that you guys are excited to hear from our panelists today. There we go. All right. Can everyone see my screen? Are we good? Great. Okay, we will just keep cooking along and hope to have Ellie rejoin us. So welcome to our Applying Succeeding as a Diverse MBA Candidate. We're super excited to have you here today. Oh, just kidding. I'm seeing Ellie in the chat. Ellie, are you with us? Are you good?
Yes, I believe so. Am I cutting out or am I good?
You're good now. You're good now. Excited to have
Perfect.
you back with us. I will just keep my screen shared and we can keep things cooking along. Just doing
Perfect.
a quick intro. Okay, I'll get out of your
Perfect.
hair and back to you,
Thanks
Ellie.
so much. Sorry for the snag there, folks. The joys of live delivery. We love it. But thanks for rolling with the punches there. Like Amanda mentioned, this is the Applying Succeeding as a Diverse MBA Candidate. Super excited to dive right in and hear from our panelists. So we're in Wednesday of MBA week. I'm sure some of you have joined our previous sessions and have been learning lots. So we're a little over halfway. We've still got way more down the line that we're excited for. So lots coming up over the coming days. In terms of logistics, you can ask questions in the chat. Please make sure that you RSVP for any future sessions that you're planning to attend so we can plan to see you there. Join each event and so you can access giveaways. We'll have giveaways in each of them. And then you can also sign up to receive the event recordings following the conclusion of these live sessions. In terms of agenda, we'll go through some quick welcome and introductions, and then we'll dive into the panel and wrap up with a final word. So starting with welcome and introductions. Hi, my name's Ellie. I'm part of the Leland team. I run our boot camps and courses offerings here. And you might also see Amanda in the chat. She's so great, helps facilitate all of these events. So super grateful to her and the events team for setting up all of the events that we've done this week. All right, and our main focus, our panelists, super excited and delighted to introduce you to Amanda, Karla, and Lucas. Want to give them each a second to introduce themselves, starting with Amanda, and we'll just work our way through.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Amanda Irizarry. I am a Stanford GSB alum. I graduated in the class of 2023, and I am now Chief of Staff at Westbound Equity Partners, which is an early stage venture capital firm based in Palo Alto. We invest at the pre-seed to Series A, and we've also done a bit of growth and even sports investing. I'm super excited to be chatting with you all today.
Awesome. Thanks, Amanda. Karla.
Hi, everyone. Nice to be here. I'm Karla. I did my MBA at Chicago Booth. I also got my Master in Public Policy at the Harvard Kennedy School, where Lucas and I were cohort mates and are good friends today. And we'll tell you way more about that, but just to show you how small these worlds are. So Lucas and I, we're in the same cohort. Amanda, nice to be on this call with you. My firm, I work in impact investing, and we're actually limited partners in Amanda's fund. So we've invested in Westbound. So very, very small world. Nice to be here. I've been coaching folks for about 10 years, have been doing MBA coaching specifically for about 5. Started with IB Advisors, which is a boutique MBA consultancy, and coach on Leland as well today. So super excited to be here and to chat with you all.
Thanks, Karla. That is so fun. What a small world. I love that. Lucas.
Hi, team. As Carlos said, I went to HKS. I did a joint degree with HBS. And prior to getting an MBA, I was actually working for a member of Congress doing transportation and infrastructure development, which, as you can imagine, is not a typical route of business school students. So happy to talk a little bit about that. After graduating, I went into impact investing and consulting. And speaking of small worlds, I then decided to pursue a career in sports. So Amanda, we'll have to connect about the current startup that I'm in. Might be of interest to your fund. Yeah, so, but more importantly, like happy to talk about how you can leverage your non-traditional background to get into these top schools and use it as a strength. I know sometimes you go to a lot of different websites and different forums, and it feels harder to get in as a non-traditional. So I'm happy to talk about how you can leverage that, and that can actually be a strength for you. We'll go through that. Happy to answer any questions about the joint degree program along the way as well. Karla is a phenomenal coach, so she also has a lot of great knowledge on the joint degree programs.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Lucas. Alrighty. That's our panelists. Would love to hear a little bit about the folks who are on the call and joining us today. In the chat, go ahead and drop in where you're at in the MBA application process, because it is beefy. Seeing some nods. Yes, it's intense. All right. Oh, someone's studying for the GMAT. A lot of GMAT prep in here. GMAT is killer. I am with you all. That is fun stuff, but it can be tough stuff. Someone starting on essays. Essays are such a big part. Yes. Letters of recommendation, brainstorming their goals, all of the above. Awesome. Perfect. So it seems like a lot of you are in the thick of prep here and making sure that you're ready to go. Super excited to have you with us. If this is your first time with us at Leland, want to extend a very warm welcome to you. We are a one-stop shop to help people like you break into the most competitive career paths and schools in the world. Undoubtedly, the MBA application process is incredibly competitive. So really honored to be helping you and providing some assistance and input as you navigate the application process. We do that through a few different channels, whether that's one-on-one coaching with our panelists here or other coaches on our website, in addition to live cohort-based courses like our boot camps, as well as our on-demand content library, Leland Plus, and these kinds of free event series that we are on today. Our coaches have helped thousands of people get into their dream schools and land their dream jobs. You are next. I'm super excited to have you with us, super excited to help you along your path, and excited to be plugged in on your journey here. And with that, let's go ahead and dive into our panel. All right, first question. Starting off strong with, what is your best tip for applying to a top MBA program as a candidate from an underrepresented background? I'd like to hear from each of our panelists on this one. So Amanda, would love to start with you, and then we'll go to Karla and then Lucas, if that works.
Sure. My absolute best tip for applying as a candidate from an underrepresented background is to own your story and your unique lived experience and your edge and your why. I strongly believe that it is that unique story and that lived experience and that edge that will make you stand out in the application process, not just because you're underrepresented, but because you have something unique to say. So own that and be really intentional about identifying what that unique perspective is. And yeah, excited to talk more about how you can do that.
Awesome. Thanks, Amanda. Karla.
Yeah, just want to echo that great observation from Amanda and just say, you know, it's always so interesting to think about how you view yourself versus how someone else might. And for example, for someone like me, who's like a first generation Mexican American immigrant, I'm like, okay, everyone in my family is like me, right? So surely like everyone knows about my journey and everyone's familiar with it. And that's really not the case at all, right? Especially depending on the demographic that you come from, you might be severely underrepresented in your class, regardless of the size. And so, you know, there's only one of you, one way to tell, there's only one of you, there's only one person who can tell your story. And so would just like lean into that and not be afraid to spotlight what makes you different.
Awesome. Thank you, Karla. Lucas.
Yeah, I mean, not too much to add. I think I echo both of Karla and Amanda's points. I think the most important thing is making sure that when you hit that submit button, that person, that human that's going to read your application knows who you are and why you care about the things that you say you want to fix in the world. So, other than that, I'd say like a more tactical tip is you don't have to be the person that says who you are just on your application, on your essay. So you have the entire application to cover different aspects of that, because some parts of it might be kind of weird to say, like, I am the greatest leader that has ever existed, right? You want someone else to use to give examples of how you show up as a friend, as a mentor, as a worker, as a teammate. So the only tactical version I would say is just use other parts of your application to really explain different parts of who you are and why you care about the things that you do.
Yeah. Oh, that's terrific. I think the common thread between these thoughts is just lean into your experiences, your story, who you are as a person, and make sure that that comes through in your application and throughout your application, not just in your essays, not just in your personal statements, things like that. That's great. Our next question, did you leverage any specific organizations, networks, or resources for underrepresented applicants during your MBA journey, and which ones made the biggest difference for you? Karla, would love to start with you on this one.
Yeah, and you know, I will drop these in the chat afterwards because it's a lengthy list. And I think, you know, if there's one thing you take away from this question, it's really use all the resources at your disposal. So for example, I did management leadership for tomorrow's MLT's MBA prep program. I was an IB advisor fellow before it was called that. I was like the guinea pig for Lulu Curiel, who's just like an incredible advisor there. She was my coach throughout the MBA process. I was chosen as a Forte Foundation Fellow, which is geared at women at Booth. So that was an incredible network of women to join and to get a scholarship from. I went into investment banking after school, and I was selected for the JP Morgan Early Advantage program, specifically for women, underrepresented minorities, veterans, LGBTQ folks. And basically I had an offer in hand walking into school, which was amazing to not have to recruit during the regular cycle. So there's so many, you know, resources at your disposal, and I would just stay really open to them and stay open to connecting with folks who do come from other represented minority groups, because they will often tell you about these resources. And sorry, one more I want to plug, the Twigo Foundation, specifically for people interested in finance. That was an incredible network as well.
That's great. And maybe one quick follow-up on this. It sounds like you found a lot of these opportunities by networking with other underrepresented groups, but I'm curious, like were there other techniques or strategies that you used to identify these opportunities?
Yeah, and I think that this might go back specific to like the prior question, which is like, what's one piece of advice that you would give? And that's that this process, yes, it's about you, but this is a lifelong network, right? And the people that you meet throughout the process are the people that will follow you. And just to give you an anecdote, today when I'm doing diligence on fund managers, I'll often call people who are in my Twigo class and say, hey, have you talked to this person? Can you facilitate this introduction? And so I would actually think of this process as a team sport, because the more generous you are with your time and resources to other people, the more in turn, they'll be invested in your journey and ensuring that you succeed as well.
Oh, that's great insight there. Thank you so much. I think hopping over to our next question, we've talked about how competitive this admissions process is. Given that competitive nature, what's your advice for standing out in the application process? Lucas, do you mind taking this one?
Yeah, I think this one, again, my focus is with non-traditional candidates, and usually when they've booked time with me, the first call is usually about, how do I tell my story? How do I make it business-like? How do I connect it to business school? And in a way, how do I translate my work into something like super specific that only folks in my field know, to an admissions officer understanding what it is and what I do, and how the MBA connects to that. So my biggest advice would be finding a way to connect what you've done to where you're going, right? And what I mean, that's beyond just work. The most important piece of advice that I got throughout the process was help that person connect the dots, the person being the admissions officer, by telling them, again, who you are. I know I'm being redundant here, which was my advice in the first place, but explaining who you are. An example of that, I'll be more specific, is I'm an immigrant from Brazil, right? I moved to the States when I was 9 years old. And for me, I needed to connect my story to my personal and work story, to why to my background, right? So in Congress, I did a lot of immigration work. So for me as an immigrant, someone helped me when I first moved to this country and changed the trajectory of my life. So I connected that to wanting to give back and doing that in my career up until that point, and then how going to business school was going to help me do that to more people and leverage that to help more people out. So really connecting the dots between who you are as a person, who you are as a teammate, who you are as an employee, to then what you're going to do in the future, not just right after business school, but 10, 15 years down the line, I think will help you go a long way in telling that full story and painting the full picture for the admissions officer.
That's great. Just making sure that your story is so clear, you show up in all parts of it, and you're anticipating what that would look like down the road, even post MBA. That's great. Thanks, Lucas. Our next question is, if you could go back in time, what would you tell your pre-MBA self about the application process? And is there something you wish you had known earlier? Amanda, would love to hear from you on this one.
Sure. Can I also add on to the last one?
For sure. I love it.
Just a tactical thing that I did when thinking about how to stand out, because I see some questions here that are asking which parts of my identity do I share and how do I determine that. And so I wrote out on one big old slide, this is my business school brand. And it was 5 statements and they were very simple. I am a strategic operator who has worked in big tech and a startup. I am a proud Afro-Latina from the Bronx, New York. I care about this. I want to go into this. Like, what are the big statements?
And then that mix ends up being quite unique. So you might think your story is the same as everyone else's, but I'm telling you, it's not. And once you can begin to then thread all of those different statements together, that becomes your holistic brand and story. And so I use that as my anchor. And then I would, in my essays, am I saying this? In my interviews, how am I saying this? And like just have a North Star in that way. So that was something that was helpful for me. If I could go back in time with my pre-MBA self about the application process, it is a doozy, which you might know already or have seen depending on how far you are in the process. I would honestly tell myself to take care of myself. It's really important to make sure that throughout it, you are practicing self-care and almost reframe it and use it as, this is kind of corny, but an opportunity to do a lot of deep self-reflection on how far you've come and who you are and where you're heading. Kind of a business school allows you to do that again, but as you're applying, it's kind of this really exciting time where you are asked, who are you? What have you accomplished? Where do you want to go? And I think taking advantage of that time and treating it seriously and being very intentional about all the pieces leading up to it, I think is a really special time. So it's almost a reframe. It might feel like the essays are a hassle and the interview prep and all the things, but kind of reframe it in that way, and maybe it'll help.
Yeah, for sure. It sounds like that kind of self-reflection also just serves you well through your program and even beyond it as well. Gives a lot of clarity. Thanks so much, Amanda. All right, our next question. How can applicants identify the MBA program that's the best fit for their goals, their values, and identity? Karla, I'd love to have you take this one.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting that on first look, a lot of the programs look very similar, right? Like they all have some sort of core module, they all have some sort of like travel component with your classmates, they all want you to be involved in clubs, and it all looks, on the surface, it all looks the same. But I think as I would spend time, especially if you work with a coach, they should be able to illuminate on some of those program differences, and also just talking to people from the different schools. I think that unveils a lot. And so, for example, I would just really, really encourage you to do your due diligence. So I'll give you an example. When people think of MIT Sloan, they think of, obviously tech things, innovation, in line with the broader MIT ecosystem, and that is very real. But I think that as you dig in more into the curriculum and kind of what MIT is really, really great at, one thing that people often don't know off the bat is that they have an incredible operations program. And even looking at like the class offerings, like if you can get your hands on like a class catalog, you'll see they have a lot of different operations classes compared to other schools. And so again, it's just about like doing that intentional work to scratch below the surface, and doing that, whether it's with current students or a coach, will really be helpful in that.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you, Karla. I'm also curious, like when you talk about getting the course catalog, is that something that you were just looking up? Were you getting that from like an academic counselor at the school? From a current student? Oh no, I think it was frozen. We will come back to that.
I think some schools have it readily available on their websites. So if you do enough snooping, you can absolutely go on the websites, find course catalogs. But I will second what Karla said about talking to people as much as you can. Reach out and do the cold outreach, the warm outreach. You'll be surprised how many people are willing to give you that time and want to support you through this process. So just talk to them. Hey, I want to, especially current students. They're very busy, but I think because they're fresh out of the process, they like talking about it. So
for sure. Thanks, Amanda. All righty, we have a quick little intermission here. A reminder if you joined us a little bit late, but we are giving away a $200 coaching credit from this free event, if you'd like to enter to win that credit, you can use this bit.ly link. You can also use this QR code, and that's coaching credit that you can use on the Leland platform. In terms of like how you might use this $200 coaching credit, we can support you on any part of your application journey, from essay strategy all the way through interview prep. This coaching credit would be great to use toward any kind of part of your application process to get, another vested interest in your application, your story, and your journey through the MBA. So would love to encourage you to enter to win. And with that, we're back to our panel questions. I've seen this in the chat, but several attendees have shared questions about imposter syndrome. How have you managed these feelings, and what advice would you offer to others? Lucas, would love to hear from you on this one.
Yeah, this one, if I'm being honest, still creeps up from time to time. I think for me, what was really helpful was MLT. Karla mentioned it as one of the resources for those of you who aren't applying this year and will be applying next year. You can apply to MLT's MBA prep program, and that program pairs you up with a coach and more importantly, a cohort of around 300 folks with similar backgrounds that help you throughout the process. But for me, I think this was crucial because not only did I get to see folks that are coming from similar backgrounds and similar identities to me, it made me feel confident in telling my story and confident that I was going to stand out. I saw a question on the chat about whether applying as a diverse candidate, given all that's going on in the United States with regards to DEI programs, if that makes sense, or if that's, that would be a disadvantage. And I think this is an important one to address. Absolutely not. I don't think it's a disadvantage at all. I think part of it is, again, part of who you are, right? It's your identity. It's honestly your superpower because it follows you whether you like it or not into every space that you walk into. So you have to own that. And in terms of admissions and schools, like it's not, you won't be punished for it in any way, shape, or form. If anything, it just helps you tell the story of who you are. And yeah, so I think on the imposter syndrome, just being comfortable with telling your story and knowing that no one else in the world has the same story as you. So you're the only person. I know Karla says this a lot, so I'm stealing a line from her, but you are literally the only person that can tell your story, and there's power in that. And I'll share a quick example for me. The imposter syndrome for me came up because I was trying to only talk about work, right? I didn't want my identity or my personal story to be part of my MBA application. And I remember I was applying for a fellowship that was due before the first round of applications, and I sent it to a friend a good friend for them to give me feedback, and he's like, "Dude, this is not you. Like you told me this story and that story and this story. Those are really powerful stories, and tell the reader who you are, and this is not you." And I remember rewriting that entire application overnight and just weeping at 4 a.m., just crying because it was the first time that I had processed a lot of those things. But I knew that I was so proud of hitting submit because that person that was going to read it, I didn't even care about the result. I cared that they knew exactly who I was and what I cared about. So yeah, so I think, stealing from Karla, no one else can tell your story the way that you can. So just own it and know that, you are what has gotten you here, and that story and those challenges are what's going to get you to that next phase. So yeah, that was a little long-winded, but I wanted to address that.
No, I love it. I like the point here. It's not just telling your story and what happened, but it's also highlighting how that impacted you as a person, like what you learned from it, how you grew. what you did to actually navigate that experience, and then kind of what you took from it, how that's changing how you make decisions now and things like that. I think that's such a big point. I'm also imagine as an AdCom, it's great to read essays like that. It's probably such a welcome break from maybe essays that aren't nearly as genuine. Perfect. Alrighty, our next question. What on-campus resources or communities at your MBA program supported your success? Were you involved in any diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives during your time there? I love this question. I feel like when folks talk about their MBA programs, all the time it comes back to the people they met, the groups that they were a part of, and how that shaped their program, even outside of their coursework. So would love to hear from Amanda, Karla, Lucas, like any of those groups that you were involved in that you felt really contributed to your success, I think both career-wise, outcome-wise, and also just as a person.
I can hop in quickly. At the GSB, we have the Center for Social Innovation, and I worked at Google, and I worked on at google.org, which is their philanthropy and social impact team. And I'm very drawn towards impact, but also social innovation. So I wrote my whole essay about wanting to be a social entrepreneur. And so that community in particular was very helpful as it related to my professional success. And then of course there's a club, a community for any industry that you can think of pretty much typically. And so I was also involved in some of the entrepreneurship club initiatives, venture capital club initiatives. And then in terms of a background perspective, also involved in the BBSA, the Black Business Student Association, as well as the Hispanic Business Student Association. And so Stanford joined the consortium after I graduated, but the consortium, if you haven't looked that up yet, is a great resource. I can't remember, Karla or Lucas, if you already mentioned this, so forgive me if it's been said already, but great, great resource. If you apply via the consortium, think of it as the Common App for business school, and you can apply that route. You have to demonstrate values alignment with what the organization stands for. So go ahead and read up on it. I can link it in the chat. But that also, I know a lot of folks who went to a consortium school, and that ended up being a great community for them as well.
Awesome. Thanks, Amanda. It's a very comprehensive list. I love it. Any other thoughts from, any other thoughts from Karla or Lucas on-campus resources or communities?
Yeah, so I was a career pivoter, and I'm assuming some of you who are joining this session are also going to pivot into different careers. So most schools will have a really good dedicated career services office, and you'll be assigned to a specific one. HBS is really great because they have a bunch, and you can pick depending on industry that you want to go into or style and a bunch of different ways. So you have a lot of other schools will have a lot of like a career office that is dedicated to your needs for folks that are coming in my case, from the public sector that want to transition into consulting or any other like investment banking or more traditional backgrounds. And not only that, I transitioned after graduating and then transitioned into sports recently, and I still tapped into the career services for HBS. So that, and then of course the alumni network. For me, what was also crucial, which is a little bizarre, was rugby. I played rugby at HBS. I never played before. I just played to get exercise during COVID, and then ended up loving it. And that the alumni from the rugby alumni have been the greatest source of connections in the sports world that I've had since leaving. So any group, any identity group, sports group, any interest group that you join while you're in your MBA, you can leverage those connections both present in your classmates, because it's a great way to learn classmates that you otherwise wouldn't get to know outside of class, but also alumni that just love talking about their time. Like for me, it's like alumni love talking about how they played rugby at HBS and they go back to like a happier time in life. So yeah, those are some of my examples.
Awesome. What position did you play in rugby?
Fly half.
Nice. Love it. Awesome. We can move on to our next question. Outside of your MBA program, did you take part in any external programs or communities that helped you thrive during school? So we just asked kind of about on-campus resources, on-campus communities. Were there any kind of external ones that help support you and thrive during your program? Karla, maybe we start with you on this one and open it up to others.
Yeah, I really, I dropped a bunch of names in the chat, but definitely, as I mentioned, MLT, the Twigo Foundation Consortium is also a really great resource. But I guess like to answer this question and a little bit of the last, I just kind of want to zoom out for a second. And I think that like Lucas knows this, being in my cohort, when I went to grad school, I was like doing all the things, DEI. I was like, why don't we have more people of color here? And I took it upon myself, right, to like move and shake and make a lot of noise to get greater representation. And like it was very fruitful, especially at the Kennedy School. We doubled the number of like Black and Latino people at Kennedy. That hadn't happened in 10 years. That stat hadn't changed. So it was like considerable. I guess in today's like political environment, though, I think in all ways, right, it's just important to think about and to keep in mind like how much personal bandwidth and time and energy and resources you want to put into those efforts, and then how much of it just feels like it would be too much of a burden to take on. And I think oftentimes if you are someone who like really cares about your community and you see something you don't like for example, if your MBA class isn't at gender parity, right, that might really bug you, and it might be something that like you're really, really committed to fixing. I think it's just important to kind of like step back and think about your responsibility as an individual versus the institution's responsibility to remedy some of those lapses. And I think it's also really, really important to keep in mind that like, 100 years ago, how many women were there at business schools? Like not very many, right? So all that is to say is like in throwing out all these resources, like definitely get involved, but also like just encourage you to keep in mind like overload is real and just being really intentional with where you focus your time.
Yeah, I think that was going to be my follow-up question there is obviously you're at school, you're taking classes. How do you balance being involved in your campus community as well as your external campus, external community? How do you approach thinking about that investment? And are there any like helpful, I don't know, thought exercises that helped you evaluate how to invest your time? I'm seeing nods. So feel free to chime in.
Yeah, prior to starting school, once I knew where I was going, I identified all of the different buckets in which I could spend my time, because you will get pulled a lot of ways. Obviously, you're there for academics, but you're also there to network, and you're there for your professional goals. And everyone really does come. Some people are like, I'm starting this company no matter what. So identify your buckets: academic, social, professional development, et cetera, et cetera. And then I wrote out all of the things at the GSB that I could do that related to each bucket. And I literally gave myself time, like percentage. And it was an estimate. I didn't know until before I got there. I didn't know before I got there what the time split would actually be. But even the exercise of here's how I could spend my time, here are all of the different opportunities, and here are where my priorities are, and force yourself to allocate percentage points. It can only add up to 100, and then reevaluate after every quarter, after every opportunity you get.
Awesome. Thank you, Amanda.
Yeah,
Lucas.
can I add a little to what Amanda said? It just reminded me of something that I tell my mentees after they get into business school. Once you step into campus, it's chaos. Every minute of your day is either booked or in competition to be booked. So especially coming from a non-traditional background, it's really hard because even though people say, you know, people don't take academics that seriously, but you're learning, for me, I was learning finance for the first time. And it's really hard when you have 90 other students that know finance to a T and you're being asked, you know, to know it at that level. So something I wish I did, and it's the advice that I give, like I said, a lot of my mentees is once you get in, if you're able to take time from work before you start, or like a week or a few days, go away and really sit in silence or whatever method works for you and think about what it is that you want to get out of this experience, and reflect on where you've been, because it's so hard to get caught up in the chaos that business school is. So the admittedly, I didn't do business school, as didn't get everything out of business school, because again, I was being tugged in many different ways. And I wish I would have taken some time before heading in to really do what Amanda just said and prioritize like what I care about. And that gives you direction to say no to a lot of things. And if you don't do that, it takes you a few months to learn how to say no. And those months are super valuable. An example of that is I probably wouldn't have gone into consulting if I had reflected. I would have gone into sports, which is, you know, a dream career of mine from the get-go, and business school has all of the resources to help you get into that. So again, that's something that, whether, you know, you're lucky enough to take, I know some people that are lucky enough to have the financial means to take 2 weeks, a month off before starting school, or even if it's the weekend before you start, just take some time to sit and reflect on, you know, where you've been, where you want to go, and what are the priorities that you want to get out of it, because it'll really help you once you step in.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Lucas. I wanted to take just one question from the chat. I think Karla got to it. But the question was, how do you balance having realistic post-MBA career goals in your application and following your dreams of wanting to pivot to hard to get industries like PE, VC, might throw management consulting in there as well, especially as an international applicant. Karla had some thoughts there, which I thought were helpful, but imagine there are several folks who are thinking about this question and trying to navigate it in their application. So maybe Karla, if you don't mind giving us maybe a live summary there, and other folks want to chime in, that's great.
No, I mean, it's a great question. And I mean, the market is funny. Like the world is just, it's a funny place to be, right? The market's saying one thing, a lot of indicators are saying another thing. If you're like having a great time and you're like fundraising oodles of cash and you're having no issues, call me because I need to talk to you. But basically all that is to say is like, you know, doesn't matter what you think politically, higher education right now is facing a moment. You know, there's a lot of activity with the government that is impacting higher education institutions in not the best ways, especially like the top MBA programs and where a lot of them sit. And so when something like this happens, I think it's important to kind of like look up and read the room and understand that like if you want to pitch that you're going to build like the next Meta or the next Google, that's not to say you can't, right? But schools, just like, you know, yourself, might be more risk averse right now because there's just so much uncertainty in the air. And so I guess to you, you know, like my question to an applicant would be, do you want to be someone who says like, listen, I'm going to go into investment banking or consulting where I'm, you know, pretty stable industries, pretty like, you know, pretty outlined career trajectories, like there is a path and it's known? Or do you want to pitch these like entrepreneurial ambitions? And that's not to say you can't, right? But just especially in this current moment, schools don't have as much of an appetite for that kind of profile. And so I think it's really important to assess, okay, can I make a convincing argument if I'm going to pitch something that's more atypical? And I think that that's something to really, really keep in mind in, you know, in this moment.
Yeah, I think that echoes a lot of the has been shared about just like being self-reflective. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Amanda. Would love to hear from
No
you.
worries. I was just gonna add, I think it also kind of depends on the program. I think if the GSB is, our tagline is change lives, change organizations, change the world. And so if you're like, I'm gonna go and start the next whatever, like they might eat it up. It depending on again, I think the key is to be authentic to you and who you are. Like, can you draw the through line as to why you are the person that's gonna change the world or whatever? But a school that maybe doesn't have as much of a brand or track record or whatever of being like super entrepreneurial. So I think take that as well. And in your essay, often you'll have an opportunity to say why Stanford, why whatever. And if your career aspirations align with that school, it's just you're telling a more authentic story. So
For sure.
so
Yeah, I think to your point too, your essays will be tailored to the schools you are applying to. So you have the opportunity to emphasize and highlight those commonalities that align there. And you should. Lucas.
Yeah, I have one quick thing to add here is there's a big difference between your post MBA goals and your long-term goals. But again, especially if you're coming from like a completely non-traditional background, they have to align and they have to make sense. And like Amanda said, there has to be a through line. So that's the most important thing, right? You can't say I'm going to create the next meta and not help them understand how is it that you are well positioned for that, or what you've done will tie to that. So I think so long as you say like, post business school, I am going to work for Google in their innovation department that does X, Y, and Z, and use my experience from the public sector to create a meta that is better for the world and doesn't use algorithms to sell our souls. And this is how I'm going to do it. And I did some policy work on X, Y, and Z ahead of it. So I have that part of my experience. The business degree is going to give me the business tools to then go build it as a business, right? So it has to be a clear through line. Otherwise, like Karla said, schools do not have the appetite to guess how and why you are well positioned for it.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you. That's a nice piece of like tactical advice for how that shows up in your application. Thanks so much. All right. Our last question. What is your final tip to help applicants stand out in the MBA application process and get accepted to their dream schools? We'll hear from each of our panelists on this one. I know this one feels like it carries so much weight, but Amanda, would love to start with you. Then we'll go to Lucas and we'll wrap up with Karla if that works.
Sure. Since my first tip was more broad around owning your story, owning who you are, and then I went more tactical, know what your holistic brand is, always have that North Star to guide all of your application materials. And then another tactical one is just be super organized. It's gonna help you in the long run. I actually just pulled up my folder so that when I'm answering your little pings, I'm answering based on my experience. And I know exactly where my essays are. I know exactly where my letters of recommendations are. I knew exactly when everything was due. So be organized. It goes really, really, really long way to just have all of your ducks in a row so that you're not stressed out throughout the whole process. That's a tactical one. It's not graded.
No, that's
the block.
Thanks, Amanda. Lucas.
Yeah. Again, nothing much to add. I think Amanda touched on a lot of it. I think a very tactical one is if you can get the test out of the way. That is in your control. Get it out of the way because it is, if you're telling the story as you should, it's very emotionally taxing. So you want to have the emotional capacity and the energy to dig deep and tell the story that you ought to tell about yourself and your experiences and how they've shaped you. So that one is a tactical one. I think one that might be controversial, and Karla and Amanda, feel free to disagree with me. Go for your dream school. Don't don't look at these, don't go to poets and quants and give too much credit to those folks, especially coming from a non-traditional background. Those are averages. There are folks that get in with way below average test scores, GPAs, non-top schools for undergrad. So don't let anyone, including your coaches, deter you from applying to your dream program. Only you can tell that story, and there is a human that's going to be reading your essay on the other side. So please apply to your dream program. Like there is, something to be said about being realistic, but do not let anyone, including your coaches, deter you from applying to those dream programs. Yeah, and I'll leave it at that.
Can I add, Lucas? I'm so glad you said that. My biggest regret was Stanford has a night Hennessy program, which is a full ride. So if you didn't know, now you know. You have to apply round one to be eligible for that. And I didn't apply. I'm not saying I would have gotten it, but I counted myself out before I even had the chance. And then I got into the GSB. I wasn't even sure I would get into the GSB. And then I counted myself out before they could. So 100% couldn't agree more, because that was my biggest regret, was not applying for that program. So yes, Lucas.
Thanks, Amanda. Karla, your final tip.
Yeah, I would say, in this process, a lot of people focus on outcomes, right? So I want to go to this specific school, or I want to transition into this specific industry. I would say focus on inputs, because they're the only thing you can control, right? And so if you spend more of your mental capacity, mental energy, just perfecting your essays or putting together, the best recommender packs to help your recommenders, when you submit your materials and while you're waiting to hear back from schools, I think you'll just have satisfaction that I did everything I could to do this process and do it really well. And ultimately, that's the only thing that's in your control. And I find that when people really focus on perfecting those inputs, the outcomes follow. So control the things you can control, and just let go of everything else.
Awesome. I think that's great. I think what I'm taking away from these 3 last tips is give yourself every advantage and every opportunity you can. Take advantage of what you have. And if at the very least you'll have no regrets in your application and likely a lot of success there. That's great. Thanks so much for the advice here. That wraps up our panel. Huge thank you to Amanda, Lucas, and Karla for being so generous with their input and their advice on this application process. They have been through it. They have helped others through it. If you would like to work with them, go ahead and take a screenshot of this slide. It has QR codes to each of their Leland profiles where you can set up time to connect with them and talk about your application goals. It's so great to have someone who is on your side, has all of your best interests at heart when you're going through this process, and you don't have to do it on your own. So I would encourage you to reach out to them to get support as you're thinking through your MBA application. And next, I want to announce our giveaway winner of the $200 coaching credit. Drum roll, please. Our giveaway winner is Samuel Nachukwu. I am so sorry if I mispronounced that, but super excited. Congrats on winning the $200 credit. A member from our team will reach out to you so that you can get that set up. And with that, thanks to all who joined. Look forward to seeing you during the rest of MBA week. Feel free to set up a strategy call using this code, this QR code, and we can help pair you with the best coach for your background, your needs, your goals, and look forward to seeing you again soon. Thanks so much.